sense of belonging which drives us towards certain groups, certain people, is really, really important in the formation of our identity. But how is this identity created? Who creates this identity? Who decides what the rules are in terms of confirming? I've decided not to put up more slides because I'd rather interact with you than put up some of this meaningless information. But what is really important is how we view this traditional kind of conforming. If you look at today's economy or look at the market today, it's no longer traditional structures of race, sex, class, and any one of those things. It's a far more subtle kind of a conditioning. Sometimes we don't even know it. We wear it like an old shirt. We've become so used to wearing it that it feels so comfortable that we've stopped thinking about the things that we do or the things that we say. So in this new economy, or what we call the market-driven economy, there is a new kind of liberalism which makes all of us, instead of being a solid group, instead of being a conforming group, we are all reduced to becoming a sea of competing individuals. So competition has become the rule of the day. And it becomes very important who becomes a winner or a loser. And the media, the market which is driven by media and consumerism, materialism, has made this really, really big. All right? So how do they do that? So if you notice, in any of the advertisements, can you think of an ad where a woman is conditioned to a particular response? All the ads. Yes. I don't know if you remember this ad, and I reacted and wrote to the papers also, and I don't hope the advertisers are not here. But there was this advertisement for a fairness cream. I think we all have issues with that, isn't it? With a fairness cream. And here you have this girl who becomes invisible to this Prince Charming who's playing a game of chess. I don't know if you remember that. So here is this girl who's playing a game of chess, and the hero or this man doesn't even notice her because she is so dark. What does it mean in a society? That you're invisible. So what does this girl need to do in order to become visible? She has to use the fairness cream. And the moment she uses the fairness cream, what happens to her? She wins the chess game. And she gets the attention of the Prince Charming. So she has been rescued from invisibility and anonymity by using a fairness cream. And this goes on day after day. You just sit in front of the television and you will see these responses. All right? So there is always this ideal that we are all striving for. It's a struggle to be this perfect person, because only fair people get jobs, only tall people get jobs, fat people don't get places in an airline, in a proper seat. There are these constant discriminations because the market has driven us to this sense of perfectionism. You have to be perfect, otherwise you will not succeed. And it is a striving. It's a struggle. We are constantly trying to be someone that we are not. We are forced into an avatar, and many avatars, because from morning to evening we are slipping into roles, and somewhere, so many roles, sometimes you don't know which role we're playing. Because I know that I sometimes play manager in my house. And I was sharing it with the ladies, I have made my home, at least for the longest time, into another organization, because there are lists, there are schedules, there are deadlines, there are timetables, and I'm managing everything because it's so easy for me to just take those lessons and put them to practice at work. But the tension or the stress, the anxiety of performance is so great on each of us. We're really uncomfortable being who we are supposed to be. So for me, it's not about being this assertive, aggressive go-getter, because that is the market-driven idea of perfection, of success. And we have to think, Today is a day to think. You have the luxury of time to just step back out of your corporate culture and to think for a minute and say, who am I really? And am I happy doing what I do? Because it's not important, like somebody said, your work won't speak for you. We all have this notion that my work will speak for me. Once your work is done, it doesn't belong to you anymore. It's lost. It's almost lost in oblivion. How you feel about your work is more important than your work. Ladies, hold on to that thought. How you feel about your work is more important than what you do. And your sense of belonging cannot be more important than your sense of self-acceptance. That's where it really begins, because then you can battle this urge to be perfect. So according to the mantra of the market then, who is most successful? And according to social anthropologists, a Dutch social psychologist called Paul Verhaak, who says, the most successful person is the most productive man and woman. We're not talking about reproduction. We're talking about being productive. All right? Being productive. So what does that really mean? It's about being successful, about being tough. It's about being perfect. So if you look at the old way of thinking, the old structures, the traditional structures, they were all about conforming. But today's corporate speak is about what? Something that rhymes with conform. Perform. I think we all know that. Isn't it? So there is continuous assessment, there is continuous reviews, there are continuous meetings to make you toe the line so that you perform according to the rules, according to the norm. So in a market-driven economy, what does normal mean? Normal is perfect and successful. So all of us in this room, including myself, are dysfunctional. That's the fear. We are dysfunctional because even if you look at a chart in a classroom, I think all of us went through that, where the teacher would put up a conduct chart, a behavior chart. All right? So if there were 30 people in the class, 5 people got stars, golden stars for good behavior. And maybe there were 2 or 3 people who would get that lovely black dot. But I think what I'm really concerned about are those 25 people or 20 people in between who get neither a star nor a black mark and are completely become invisible. So average is not acceptable in this market-driven culture. We have to constantly prove ourselves. It's called the burden of expectation, the burden of proof. Everywhere we go, we are supposed to prove ourselves. Yes, I am a woman in technology. Yes, I am a super mom. Yes, I'm a super girl. I'm a super partner. I'm a super wife. Everything is about being perfect. And somewhere in transitioning between all these roles, these conditioned roles, it's only a role. Ladies, please remember, gentlemen as well, it's only a role. There is no value in that role. There is no value in that designation. And somewhere we have lost value because we are lost in translation. Going from one role to another, from one role to the other. Where is the real you? Where is that person? All right? And the market-driven economy therefore fills us with fear. What if I don't succeed? What if I'm not good enough? What if I don't get that promotion? What if I don't get that job? What if I don't get that man? What if I don't have children? I'm sure all of us have gone through that. It's a fear. And how is that fear created? It's driven by this market economy. So there's fear, and then there's shame. I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not successful enough. Nobody knows me. I'm an invisible roll number, a swipe card in an organization of 3,000 to 4,000. Does anybody know you? Does anybody see you? It's painful. So the fear, the shame, the guilt is something that we are constantly carrying with us, the burden of expectation. This anxiety constantly to perform and to be successful. So what is this fear? And one of my favorite authors, her name is Marianne Williamson, it's a great book to read, A Woman's Worth. She says women are in emotional bondage as long as they worry about whether they want to be heard or whether they want to be loved. Women are constantly in emotional bondage if they have to worry about whether they want to be heard or whether they want to be loved. When I use the word love, not in a typical romantic sense, but accepted for who you are. Shame as well. Shame is like a straitjacket given to us because of conflicting, competing expectations constantly. How do we cope? What do we do? We are forced to actually speak a language that is not real to us. And I'm sorry to have to say that corporate speak is an artificial language forced on us to perform. But it's not authentic, it's not real. And I have straddled both sides of it. I've been in academics, I've been in corporate, and I understand that somewhere in between we have lost what it takes to be real. So I urge you, young women, to think about it. You know, sometime in the 1939 or 1959, one of my favorite feminist writers, very strong, very outspoken, she says, if anybody says, or if I'm afraid of anything, then I will go ahead and do it. I'm going to ask you for a single minute. You have these sheets with you. If you don't have the sheet, you can write it somewhere. But this is a luxury for you to just sit back and think for a minute. It's exactly what Sheryl Sandberg said in her book, Lean In. What would you do if you were not afraid? I want you to put it down. What would you do if you were not afraid? And I hope it will not be a conditioned response. Okay? What would you do if you were not afraid? Think about it. Think about it. Put it down. What would you do if you were not afraid? So much of our struggle to be successful is about conquering this fear of rejection, of not being accepted, of not being extraordinary enough to be noticed. That's our biggest fear. Will I be noticed? Can I be extraordinary enough so that I can be noticed? So what is it that we really need to be able to think about in terms of if hard striving is focused on the self, is self-focused, I want to improve myself, that's perfect. You can go ahead and do that. Improve yourself. Speak the language of self-improvement, self-acceptance. But the other part, which is perfectionism, is other-focused. It's not self-focused. What will people think of me? You need to be able to make that choice. Am I striving for myself, or am I trying so hard to be successful based on what other people think success is? So we really need to be able to redefine what success is. So I may not be telling you things that you really want to hear. I hear there's a huge crowd here because everybody wants to be successful. Right? And I'm telling you to think about it. What is that success really mean? So let's just look at this whole dysfunctional behavior that we are talking about being average. If you look at somebody who's shy, Sorry? Can I finish and then we'll leave it open for questions? Yes. Sorry about that. Right, we were talking about it. Let's take a person who's shy and reserved, is not really articulate, cannot really put themselves out there, because we're already always so, be a go-getter, go and stand there, be visible. But you are shy, you are reserved, you are not the kind of person who can make a public presentation. What happens to you? Yes, the pressure to perform is so huge that it can lead to other kinds of anxieties, because we have traded what we really feel for something that somebody else wants us to do. So there's a lot of anxiety, and it manifests itself in terms of rage, suppressed emotion, resentment. You can have other kinds of psychosomatic disorders, migraines, headaches, and even a heart attack like I had. Yes. At the age of 48, I was rushed into the CCU because of hypertension. I was managing a global process, so I was working 24/7. I had to be available 24/7. I had to be a mother, I had to be a daughter, I had to be a wife, I had to be the boss. And I had made myself into someone who, in every sense of the word, was successful. But something happened, and that was a wake-up call. My hospitalization, when my BP just wouldn't come down, because I was worried about? Correct. If I step back, I will become invisible again. I will be a non-performer. I might lose my job. I might have to start again from scratch to build myself up. At that point of time, my brother, who was like a fairy godfather, gave me an assessment to do, and that's why I'm in coaching today. So just take this assessment, because there's something quite disconnected about you. You're not performing. You're not the authentic person that I know. And I found out through this assessment that I actually did not like being visible. I did not like being in the front. That my nature was to actually withdraw. I liked being alone. I liked working on my own. I liked being reflective. I didn't like sitting at meetings. I didn't like deadlines, because my nature was that I like flexibility. I like to flow. I didn't like being direct. I had to fire people. I didn't like it. I was uncomfortable. It gave me sleepless nights to fire people. And then I just took a step back and said, this is not who I am. This is not what I want to be. This is not my idea of success. And I've completely changed my life around. And I think that I'm more successful now than I ever have been, because I have become authentic to the person that I am. And so this is... And that's really what entrepreneurial is about. To take a risk. To take that risk. To step back and think about what that vocabulary of success is. So I'm going to give you some suggestions, and I want you to think through it and see how that resonates with you. All right. Recently, we lost a very powerful political leader, Jayalalitha. Her politics may have been questionable, but what I'm really looking at is the person that she was. When she entered into politics, she was called a slut. Did you all know that? Yes. When she went into parliament along with MGR, who was, by the way, her paramour or her partner, she was not married to him ever. She called him mentor, of course. But she was dragged physically, her hair was pulled, and she was called a whore. And we see the journey of that woman, extraordinary courage. She transformed herself. All right, she became a politician, yes. She also, if you notice, completely desexualized herself. Of course, I don't completely agree with that, because I think you should celebrate your femininity, but that was what she decided would make a difference. So it's so interesting to see this woman who, moved from being a slut or a whore or a woman that we would consider as being really down there to being Amma, or like a goddess she was worshipped in some temples. So what was this transformation? It's like an either or, isn't it? She completely desexualized herself. She wore this long cape, but she was extremely feminine. If you look at her face and everything, she was extremely feminine, but she desexualized herself. And sometimes we feel that we have to dress for success. There is a constant pressure for us to sometimes give up our femininity. We sometimes work in cultures which are moving towards being genderless. That's fine. But remember that so much of your identity comes from difference. And we need to be able to celebrate that difference, to embrace our femininity. So I'm going to talk about 3 things that will help us recollect, renew, re-engage with some of those things which will make you successful, not in the way that the world understands it, as only being at the top, because we know that there are stories about that, and I will come to some of those. But the first one that I would recommend is vulnerability. We are supposed to be hard as nails, tough as brass, isn't it? We're not supposed to. If you cry, it's like, oh my goodness, she committed the cardinal sin in a professional environment. How can you shed a tear? You're not supposed to do that. We have completely eliminated feelings. And I think part of us connecting again to that authentic self is to be able to be vulnerable, where you actually can say, this is who I am, you have to take me. I may be dull, I may not be able to be what you want me to be. I am helpless, I don't know, I can't cope, help me. But we're not allowed to say that, because the moment you say help, what does it mean? You are incapable. That's the reading, that's the conditioning. So we are carrying this burden of not having anyone to share this with. So I want you to think about, what does it mean to be vulnerable, where you literally show up for real. I have problems. My child is sick. I cannot cope. This is my priority. For a lot of us, it can also be, I'm in this job because I want to make 2 ends meet. If you've done that and you have no guilt, believe me, you're a success. So be very clear about your motivational needs, because if your motivational needs are met, you are a success. So let no one tell you otherwise. If it's a drive for excellence that makes you who you are, go for it. If you're saying, you know what, I'm not happy with this career rat race, but you're performing, or I wouldn't even say the word performing, but you're doing your job and you're enjoying it, that's what it means. So remember that vulnerability is not a weakness. The market makes us believe that vulnerability is a weakness. It's a strength. So a vocabulary for success is about being vulnerable. How can I be more vulnerable? How can I make people see me for who I am? And there is no shame in that. There is no shame in that. All right? The next thing that I would like you to think about is how authentic you can be. Authenticity is a choice that we make every day. I've struggled with what I was going to say to you today. I had to write many abstracts in order to meet the objectives of this session. But it was good because it made me think and reflect. I don't want to come and give you something that I don't believe in. I don't want to share with you something that I have not experienced. I don't want to give you tips that will sometimes, instead of helping you succeed, will set you up for failure. And I don't want you to do that. So when we're thinking of vocabularies for success, I don't know how many of you came here because I would give you tips on how to be successful. Are you disappointed? Are you being authentic? The third one that we forget, and I think rightly when the gentleman, Mr. Sareen, spoke at the beginning, he said, learn to say no. And don't validate it. Because it always comes, no, but, or no, because, or yes, but. If it's no, it's a no. If it's a yes, it's a yes. If we have to keep validating it, then we've completely given away the power to say no or yes. The third thing that I would like you to think about is to regain the intuitive wisdom that women have, which has been lost and consolidated by years of performing. Women have amazing intuitive wisdom. It's ageless. But in our corporate speak, we are denied that language. You know, a very interesting social anthropologist called Dr. Clarissa Estes wrote a wonderful book called Women Who Run with the Wolves. I love the title. I'm going to just read out a quotation, and it's a beautiful quotation, and that's why I've written it down. I want to read it. Dr. Clarissa Estes says, though her soul requires seeing, the culture around her requires sightlessness. Right? Though her soul wishes to speak its truth, she is pressured to be silent. The intuitive wisdom of women has been completely discounted in an extremely conditioned environment. We don't give any space for that intuitive wisdom. I have been several times before a board meeting, been told to keep my mouth shut. I have been told, don't say anything. I've been told, I will make the presentation. I had a very good friend who kicked me under the table and asked me to keep quiet. We are completely discounted when it comes to intuitive wisdom. And we need to re-engage with that. It's a huge hole that we will fill in this gap that is called corporate speak. The intuitive wisdom that women naturally have. So stand up and be real. Be open to being vulnerable. That it's not a weakness, it's a strength. Learn to be able to bring back. What does your gut tell you? We've been taught to silence our gut about people, about things, about events, about decisions. A very strong, almost ageless wisdom. And we've been taught that that doesn't really count. All right? And I want to bring a couple of points over here. Because women get trivialized, because we're objectified constantly. When I said vulnerability, I asked you to be vulnerable. But we're also vulnerable as social conditioning goes. Because we are set up as objects constantly. Just look at any ad that has to do with a car, you will find a woman draped over it. I don't understand the connection between the woman and the car. You look at, I've even seen sanitary ware like commodes and wash basins that are always advertised by. And there's a reference to curves and, you know, all of that. Simply because women lend themselves to that kind of vulnerable objectification and trivialization. So most women leaders are remembered for the wrong things. All right? If you remember Hillary Clinton, and since we're all, you know, so close to the elections and, whatever happened, we saw a lot of things happen, which was literally about, is Hillary Clinton going to break the glass ceiling? I think for all of us women, literally sat with bated breath and saying, will this country, which is supposed to be liberal, actually have a woman president? I think we've beaten a lot of people, isn't it? But she was remembered more for either Bill Clinton's philandering or affairs, or for the pantsuit that she wore. Became a big topic of frontline news about Hillary's pantsuits. And these are the ways that women and their intelligence is trivialized. So the conditioning is and sometimes by women, I don't know how many of you reacted or responded to a governor, I don't remember which suburb of America it was, or whatever, mayor or whatever, who actually had the gall to say, again, trivialization, that Michelle Obama was an ape in heels. Trivialization of women on the basis of race, on the basis of class. I don't know if any of you are in this generation that knows Condoleezza Rice. Yeah, I'm glad to know that. She went to Canada for a high-level powered meeting, and she decided to wear dominatrix boots. I don't know if you know what that is. They're really very interesting boots, which make a statement. And all the news coverage on that meeting was, why did Condoleezza Rice wear those dominatrix boots? Theresa May, who's she? Prime Minister of Britain. When she visited India, what was all the news about? Her shoes. The fact that she didn't wear kitten heels, but she dressed very conservatively. Everything was about her. So you can see that a woman's intelligence reduced to an image. And that is based on the perception that she has to be that way. So we also see that in leadership, somebody was telling me there's only 6% of leadership of women. That's a very sorry percentage. A lot of the time, we are accommodated. Let's put some women on our boards. So let's take 5. We need 2 women in this department because of diversity. So let's pick 2. We are constantly accommodated. We become a concession. We become a percentage. We become a number. We become a denominator. That's something that we need to think about, because we may have cracked the glass ceiling, but we are still walking that glass cliff. And a lot of women in leadership, we've seen the pattern. If you read Oxford dictionaries, go home and research it, glass cliff. Just read Oxford dictionaries' definition of glass cliff. It's very interesting. One of the writers says that a lot of women in leadership have been brought in when things have gone beyond repair. So we've all become like a housekeeping agency. We come up to do damage control. Many women, even in your technology fields, take a look at the history of when women were brought into leadership. It's an eye-opener. It's an eye-opener. And then the market says, but women have failed to turn the company around. When were they brought in? Look at the language that we speak. I was so happy when somebody said, I like being in this conference because we can make connections. And I said, thank God she did not say network. I was so happy because that's what I wanted to talk about. We have gradually taken the language of authenticity and replaced it with corporate speak, even in real relationships. So we don't talk about real relationships, Samuel. It's stakeholder management. Isn't that right? We don't talk about real relationships or connections. We talk about networking. We are hardwired. We are programmed. People are assets. We talk about what is the return on investment of taking a woman who, if she's single, will get married, if she's married, will get pregnant. If she's pregnant, will have children, and if she has children, she will... I had a friend who at 50 went for an interview. And the man asked her whether she had already had a hysterectomy. Yes. This is the reality of the world that we're competing in. So even age has really no credibility. So think about it in terms of, have we replaced women's intuitive wisdom and language for a vocabulary which does not really capture who we are and what we do? All right? And so this transformation, we're constantly, like I said, this intuitive wisdom. So look at this conditioning, how all of us would have seen that movie, Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. Do you remember Kajol? Yeah. She was this boisterous tomboy and bouncing around. She was a great friend to have, isn't it? But then she could never marry the hero unless she becomes a sanskari. So that's another language, isn't it? Masculine speak. What happened? So she comes floating on this red sari. Remember that? She could only become acceptable according to the conditioned terms of acceptance. So tomboys, we have a tough time. And it's been like that through literature. It's one of the reasons why I took literature, to just see how women have been objectified constantly. The dark girl, the tomboy, the one who is radical, never gets Prince Charming. You have to transform yourself to get acceptance. Very hard to be accepted for who you really are. And so, as you are, most of you, young, I urge you to bring a change, which women, I mean, there are so many, there are 3,000 women at the Grace Hopper conference. Imagine the radical change that you can create in speaking a language that is authentic, vulnerable, and totally female. I urge you to do that. So the vocabulary that I'm talking about is femaleness. We need to bring that in. We have forgotten what it means to nurture people. We have replaced solidarity with competition. You know, somebody sent me this wonderful poster on WhatsApp. I don't know if she's sitting here in the audience. Very nice poster which said, if women rule the world, there would be peace on earth. Do you know why? They would not be talking to each other. That's the perception that we have. One of the greatest gifts that you have is that women are emotional enough to bond. And that's a sisterhood that you need to create, especially in a world that is so tough and competitive. Having a woman as a mentor, having a woman as a friend. Shame can never survive if there is somebody who understands you. Please note that. Shame can never survive. Fear can never survive if you have someone to share it with. And I encourage you women not to bring other women down. And we are like that. I'm sure when I walked into this room, you were already assessing me. Which community, which country, which state, you know, what is she? There is that assessment going on in your head. All right? We are constantly putting people into boxes. We need to be able to look at the others on your team. Look at the women in this room as people who have the same struggles as you. Women who are not talking about it, but are suffering in silence, who are burdened and will never talk about it. Where do we go? All right? So this is what I mean by intuitive wisdom. Connections. So, so important. And the last one that I would like to talk about is Daring Greatly. It's a wonderful book. If you all get a chance, please buy it, read it. It's transformative, it's inspirational. This lady called Brené Brown. So many of my ideas have come from here. Daring Greatly. It's available on Amazon. You can pick it up. Yes. People are constantly looking to shame us. So I can never grow old, right? Because it means that you're history. You're a fossil. You're an anachronism. I'm just using many words for the same thing. So I have to color my hair. I have to use anti-wrinkle cream. So even growing old is not acceptable. You always have to be young and bubbly in order to be successful. I'm trying. But not because Himalaya says I have to use anti-wrinkle cream, simply because that's who I am. So celebration, the whole thing of daring greatly. I was so happy that you didn't call it a conference or a seminar, but it's a celebration. There's so much to be grateful for, so much that you have achieved. And that's something that we need to look at. Like you said, like I asked you to put down, what is it that you're afraid of? And I hope that you've told yourself that. What am I afraid of? What would you do if you were not afraid? And today you can actually think about it. If you don't risk anything, you risk even more. It's a beautiful line. If you don't risk anything, you risk even more. Baby steps. Nobody is saying that you have to be the woman who will land on Mars. But baby steps. What is it that I want to do that I didn't do yesterday, that I can do today? How can I rearrange my life so I can do those things that are really so important to me? For me, space is very important. Time alone is very important. It's critical to who I am. I sometimes have to tell my family, please go away. I need this time. I need me time. I need to do artistic things. Music is a passion for me, and if I don't have music in my life, I'm dead meat. I'm a horrible person to live with. I need to have it somewhere. I'm not just talking about music as the way we understand it, but there has to be harmony. There has to be energy. There has to be rhythm. There has to be flow. That's what I'm looking for, and I hope that you will discover that for yourself. What is that life mandate? When is the last time that you experienced joy? Joy is a word that is so old-fashioned. When I use the word joy, people look at me and say, what does joy mean? And I say, you remember Pharrell's song, Happy? That's what I mean. So joy, I want you to reflect for a moment and think about, when was the last time that you had an adrenaline rush? When was the last time that you experienced joy? When was the last time that you were totally uninhibited? When was the last time that you felt energized? Can you remember it? I hope it hasn't been too long. Can you remember that time? Just think about that moment when you felt totally liberated, free. The energy just, was rising through you. You felt a rush of, wow, I'm so alive. I'm so free. Can you think of what made you do that? What made you feel that? Think about it. Think about it. You need to keep revisiting those moments. You need to keep doing those things. Because when you do those things, you come back energized to take any kind of crap that might happen anywhere. It's my mantra. Look for that. What are those things that give you that rush? It could be your work. It could be any architecture or whatever else. I was so excited yesterday because I was teaching my son something about computers, and I actually figured out the meaning of COBOL. I'm so excited actually because it says Common Business Oriented Language, and I feel I've got good marks for technology. But what was important that yesterday I read in the papers that Grace Hopper was someone who actually initiated a compiler which resulted in COBOL. That was a rush for me. For me, knowledge is a rush. When I learn something new and I connect the dots, for me that is a rush. That's why reading is so central to who I am. So find out those things that give you that rush. What is it that cooking? Great. Sometimes cooking gives me a rush. It can be different things. It could be going for a concert. It could be going and doing bungee jumping. It could be going to a theme park. It could just be horsing around with your children. When is it that you felt absolutely free and ridiculous, even silly? That's a moment of liberation that I feel and wish that you would feel more often. Because if you have those spaces of daring to be absolutely mindless about conditioned responses, you can come back to this world of conditioning and survive it. So I want you to dare greatly and have those moments in your life that you can hold on to. And when things get so monotonous, so predictable, so the everyday mediocrity of life that we are caught in, you will have that moment and you can say, I have lived. It's a beautiful quotation by T.S. Eliot. He says, where is the life that we have lost in living? Where is the life that we have lost in living? Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information? It's all lost, isn't it? We have to recover that. And women can do that because we are vehicles of transference. We bring it in. We tell our children's stories. We tell our friends' stories. And storytelling is one way of transferring an old world that needs to still live and be relevant. Because it's old world values where people are affirmed, where people are respected, where people are accepted, where people are loved. And we need that because we are people like that. We need that. That's our nurturing instinct, the instinctual wisdom that I was talking about. So when you dare greatly, it's about finding those specific moments which make you come alive. Take those risks. Is there a place that you want to go and see? Is there an art class that you want to do? Do you want to learn Japanese? Do you want to go and eat sushi? Any mad thing. But do it. And when you do that, that is a baby step towards accomplishment. All right? So daring greatly is very, very clear. If you don't risk, you risk even more. All right? I want to end with a quote. I know that you have other sessions, and this is beautiful, and I hope it will inspire you because I know that women love magic and anything magical. So here's something to hold on to. I know our lives get very dreary and monotonous sometimes, but here's some very beautiful thoughts. And this is by Dr. Clarissa Estes. She says, the book that I was telling you is Women Who Run with the Wolves. She says, if you have a deep scar, that is a door. I hope you understand what that means. If you have a deep scar, that is a door because that's your learning. That's actually your doorway to something. If you have an old story, that is a door. So stories that we have, that is a door. If you love the sky and the water so much you almost cannot bear it, that is a door. Things that we desire, things that we want. If you yearn for a deeper life, a full life, a sane life, that is a door. I hope today, ladies, that you will open the door.